Good wishes, dear children. How are you all? I hope you all are in best of your spirits and enjoying learning sessions with us. Dear children, I hope you are also ready to have a fun-filled learning session with us today. And you're ready with full zeal and enthusiasm. So why not we start today's chapter? So children, today I'm going to discuss with you Chapter 2 of your Geography book for class 7th. So, how many of you are well acquainted with the term lithosphere? Can someone tell me what a lithosphere is? Yes, exactly. Lithosphere is the rigid outermost shell of terrestrial type planet. A natural satellite that is defined by its rigid mechanical properties. On the Earth, it is composed of the crust and the portion of the upper mantle that behaves elastically on the time scales of thousands of years or greater. So let's have some fun with this activity. Before that, I would like to give you the most important instruction, and that is whatever we are going to perform, that has to be in the presence of our elders. We are not supposed to perform any activity all alone. So please be careful and do all this in the presence of your parents or elders. So let's start. I'm taking a small colored paper pellet and putting it in a beaker half filled with water. Now I'm placing the beaker on a tripod stand and heating it. You see, as the water warms up, the paper pellet is moving upward along with the warm layers of water and then sinks back along with the cooler layers of water. The molten magma inside the earth moves in a similar way, dear children. I would like to tell you about lithospheric plates also. Actually, the earth's crust consists of several large and small, rigid, irregularly shaped plates or slabs which carry continents and the ocean floor, and these are called lithospheric plates. The movement of these plates causes changes on the surface of Earth. The Earth movements are divided on the basis of the forces which cause them. The forces which act in the interior of the Earth are called as endogenic forces, and the forces that work on the surface of the Earth are called exogenic forces. So remember, the forces which act in the interior of the earth are called endogenic forces, and the forces that work on the surface of the earth are called exogenic forces. Endogenic forces sometimes produce sudden movements and at the other times produce slow motions. Sudden movements like earthquakes and volcanoes cause mass destruction over the surface of the earth. Now look here at the table of evolution of landforms. Earth movements are caused by endogenic forces and exogenic forces. Endogenic forces are of two types, sudden forces and dystrophic forces. The sudden forces like earthquake, volcano and landslides, and dystrophic forces, they are caused like building mountains. Look at the other side of the flowchart. Exogenic forces, erosional and depositional. So, these forces lead to changes in the river, wind, sea waves and glaciers. So, all this pressure makes the landforms. So, my dear children, what are you seeing today? Yes, you can see that we have made some mountains, and from one of the mountains there is a vent or an opening, and from this you can see clouds of gases and smoke coming out. So, and you can also notice that the molten material is also coming out and it is going to the ground. It is coming from the mountain and slipping down. My dear children, what is all this called? Yes, I'm talking about volcano. A volcano is a vent or an opening through which molten material and clouds of gases come out, and this can erupt suddenly. Dear children, what is a volcano? Correct. A volcano is a vent or an opening in the Earth's crust through which molten material erupts suddenly. Similarly, when the lithospheric plates move, the surface of the Earth vibrates. The vibrations can travel all around the Earth. These vibrations are called earthquakes. The place in the crust where the movement starts is called the focus. The place on the Earth above the focus is called epicenter. The vibrations travel outwards from the epicenter as waves. Greatest damage is usually closest to the epicenter, and the strength of the earthquake decreases away from the center. Look here in the figure. Origin of the earthquake. This is where the earthquake occurs. It is the origin of the seismic energy. Look here, this is the plate boundary. Here is the epicenter actually, and you see the seismic waves radiate out in all the directions like this. So dear children, be ready for an amazing activity. Take a container, fill it with water and close it with a lid. Now, in the presence of your elders, put the water to boil. Now put some peas, spoon and beads on the top lid. What do you notice? As the water boils, the lid begins to shake. The things which you have put on the lid also vibrate. The beads roll down and the spoon vibrates to make a sound. In the same manner, the earth vibrates when an earthquake occurs. Do you know? There are 3 types of earthquake waves. P waves are longitudinal waves. S waves are transverse waves. L waves or surface waves. Okay, now my dear children, let me tell you. Although earthquakes cannot be predicted, the impact can certainly be minimized if we prepare beforehand. Some common earthquake prediction methods adopted locally by people actually studying animal behavior. Fish in the ponds get agitated. Snakes come to surface. Look at this picture. The destruction is caused by an earthquake in Gujarat. Dear children, an earthquake is measured with a machine called seismograph. The magnitude of the earthquake is measured on the Richter scale. An earthquake of 2.0 or less can be felt only a little. An earthquake over 5.0 can cause damage from things falling. A 6.0 or higher magnitude is considered very strong, and 7.0 is classified as a major earthquake. So dear children, whenever you feel that it's an earthquake, what do? Dear children, we have to make sure that we take some shelter. Where to take shelter during an earthquake? Safe spot. Safe spot is like under a kitchen counter, table or desk, against an inside corner or wall. Dear children, we have to stay away from fireplaces, areas around chimneys, windows that shatter, including mirrors and picture frames. And we should always be prepared and spread awareness amongst your friends and family members and face any disaster confidently, dear children. Now, let's talk about the major landforms. The landscape is being continuously worn away by 2 processes, weathering and erosion. Weathering is the breaking up of the rocks on the Earth's surface. Erosion is wearing away of landscape by different agents like water, wind and ice. The eroded material is carried away or transported by water, wind, etc. and eventually deposited. This process of erosion and deposition create different landforms on the surface of Earth. Now, what is the work of a river? The running water in a river erodes the landscape. When the river tumbles at speed angle over very hard rocks or down a steep valley, side it forms a waterfall. Look here in the picture. This is the hard rock and softer rock undercut by the power of water. Dear children, do you know that there are thousands of small waterfalls in the world? The highest waterfall is Angel Falls of Venezuela in South America, and the other waterfalls are Niagara Falls located on the border between Canada and USA in North America and Victoria Falls on the borders of Zambia and Zimbabwe in Africa. So dear children, as the river enters the plain, it twists and turns forming large bends known as meanders. Due to continuous erosion and deposition along the sides of the meander, the ends of the meander loop come closer and closer. In due course of time, the meander loops cuts off from the river and forms a cut-off lake, also called an oxbow lake. At times, the river flows its banks. This leads to the flooding of neighboring areas. As it floods, it deposits layers of fine soil and other material called sediments along its banks. This leads to the formation of a flat, fertile floodplain. The raised banks are called levees. As the river approaches the sea, the speed of the flowing water decreases and the river begins to break up into a number of streams called distributaries. The river becomes so slow that it begins to deposit its load. Each distributary forms its own mouth. The collection of the sediments from all the mouths forms a delta. Let's talk about work of sea waves. The erosion and deposition of the sea waves gives rise to coastal landforms. Sea waves continuously strike at the rocks. Cracks develop. Over time, they become larger and wider. Thus, hollow-like caves are formed on the rocks. They are called sea caves. As these cavities become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the caves remain, thus forming sea arches. Further, dear children, erosion breaks the roof and only walls are left. These wall-like features are called stacks. The steep rocky coast rising almost vertically above the seawater is called a sea cliff. The sea waves deposit sediments along the shores forming beaches. So my dear children, now I'm going to tell you about work of ice. Glaciers are rivers of ice which do erode the landscape by bulldozing soil and stones to expose the solid rock below. Glaciers carve out deep hollows there. As the ice melts, they get filled up with water and become beautiful lakes in the mountains. The material carried by the glaciers, such as rocks, big and small, sand and silt, gets deposited. These deposits form glacial moraines. Now is the time to talk about work of wind. So my dear children, have you ever visited a desert? Have you seen sand dunes? An active agent of erosion and deposition in the deserts is wind, my dear children. In the deserts, you can see rocks in the shape of a mushroom, commonly called mushroom rocks. Winds erode the lower section of the rock more than the upper part. Therefore, such rocks have narrow base and wider top. When the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and gets deposited in low hill-like structures. These are called sand dunes. When the grains of sand are very fine and light, the wind can carry it over very long distances. When such sand is deposited in large areas, it is called loess. Large deposit of loess is found in China. So here goes your first question. Why do the plates move? Do you know why do the plates move? Correct. The movement of molten magma inside the earth results in the movement of plates. Very good. Okay, my dear children, now look at the next question. What are exogenic and endogenic forces? I hope you have an idea. Think? Yes, we just talked about all this. So, yes, correct. The movement of the earth is divided on the basis of the forces which cause them. So, the forces that act in the interior of the earth are called endogenic forces, and the forces that work on the surface of the earth are called, yes, exogenic forces. Correct. So, what is an erosion? Now tell me, what is an erosion? Exactly, erosion is defined as the wearing away of landscape by different agents like water, wind, and ice. The process of erosion and deposition create different landforms on the earth's surface. So my dear children, your next question flashes the screen now. How are flood plains formed? Correct. When a river overflows its banks, it results in the flooding of the area surrounding it. When it floods, it deposits a layer of fine soil and other material called sediments, thus forming a fertile layer of soil called floodplains. Okay, look at the next question. What are sand dunes? Correct. When the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When the wind stops blowing, the sand falls and gets deposited in the low hill-like structures, and these are called sand dunes. They are mostly found in desert areas. Okay, my dear children, how are beaches formed? Yes, the sea waves deposit sediments along the seashores. This results in the formation of beaches. Okay, what are the oxbow lakes? Correct. When the river enters the plains, it twists and turns, forming large bends known as meanders. In due course of time, the meander loops start to cut off the river and form cut-off lakes known as oxbow lakes. Okay, my dear children, now get ready for some fun activity. You have to take the correct answer. Look at the question first. Which is not an erosional feature of sea waves? Your options are cliff, beach, sea wave. Correct, beach. Okay, look at the second statement. The depositional feature of glacier is, your options are food plain, beach or moraine. Correct, moraine. Okay, look at the third statement now. Which is caused by the sudden movements of the earth? Your options are volcano, flooding or floodplain. Correct, volcano. Look at the next sentence. Mushroom rocks are formed in, your options are deserts, river valleys or glaciers. Correct, deserts. Next statement. Oxbow lakes are formed in, options are glaciers, river valleys, deserts. Correct, river valleys. So my dear children, I hope you really liked this fun-filled learning session today and learned a lot of new terms like lithosphere, about the earth, about its interior and its exterior, and the landforms, the sediments, the waterfalls, the volcanic eruptions and whatnot. So my dear children, this was really a fun-loving session and I enjoyed it, and I hope you also enjoyed learning with me. My dear children, I have an exciting homework for you. Guess what? Yes. Why don't you make a chart of volcanic eruption or any other process that you liked we talked about today? Specifically for volcanic eruptions, you can also make a model, 3D model. As I showed you, it was a paper model. You can make with as many ideas. You can use paper mashups and you can use whatever material you feel like and make your own volcanic eruption models. For that, showing the smoke, I would like to give you an idea. You can use dhoof or agarbatti. So, I hope you are gonna do this wonderful activity. So my dear children, with this I would like to take your leave now. Do your homework and keep learning. Stay in touch, stay tuned. I'll see you with another exciting session of fun learning. Till then, take care.